Hello! Today I'm going to do the science fiction and fantasy book tag. I'll leave a link in the doobly-doo about where I got the tag from. I haven't been tagged by anyone, but it looks really, really cool, and there's some really good questions on there, which I wanted to talk about, so here goes. Question 1. What's your favourite sci-fi genre and your favourite book in that genre? My favourite sci-fi genre would probably be dystopian, just because I think they say a lot about society now. It's kind of... they follow these slippery slope arguments right to the logical conclusion, which would never happen, but it's still quite good as a society to be able to say, well, if our society did this, it might end up like that, even though I don't believe in the slippery slope argument. But I think it's still a very good genre for talking about society generally. And if that's the case, my favourite dystopian book, I mean, I guess 1984 would be the best, classical dystopia. Oh, no! Brave New World. Brave New World by Aldous Huxley was a fantastic dystopian novel. Because it's not an extreme, it's a lot more believable, in a way. Everyone's, hooked on Soma and stuff. It is realistic, because we are quite an addictive species. Look at cigarettes, alcohol, drugs at the moment. Question 2, what's your favourite sci-fi being or species? Marvin, the paranoid android from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, is pretty far up there. Question 3, what's your favourite sci-fi gadget? Oh, I mean, lightsabers. Lightsabers are pretty cool. TARDIS. Yeah, I'm going to go with TARDIS, because then you'd have enough time and opportunity to, find lightsabers, and then you could have a lightsaber and a TARDIS. Question 4, in your opinion, what sci-fi book had the most breakthrough idea? I think every zombie and survivalist book, TV programme and film owes something to Day of the Triffids. I think it was one of the first books that really did the whole survivalist genre thing. Not trying to win, not trying to defeat the invading force, but actually just trying to live on and survive and find somewhere they're safe. I think John Wyndham did that really well, and that has led to the survivalist zombie genre now is huge. Question 5, what is your favourite fantasy genre and your favourite book in this genre? So I was going to say high fantasy, and my favourite book in the high fantasy genre is The Hobbit. It's The Hobbit, it's always The Hobbit. It is always The Hobbit. However, thinking about it, my favourite fantasy genre is it's those fantasy books that happen in our world. Instead of having a fantasy world, you have fantasy elements in your own world, or in the past. Harry Potter is a standard. More recently I've read The Night Circus and The Raven Boys. Any book where you have these fantasy elements happening in our world as an addition to our world. That's my favourite genre. I don't know what you'd call it. Question 6, what is your favourite magical or fantastical being? Hobbits! Also house elves. I really like house elves. They're so damn cute. Question 7, what's your favourite fantastical artefact? I like in Discworld the spell that is lodged in Rincewind's mind. A really good idea in that book was that Rincewind read this really important and powerful spell, and it came out of the book and into his head, pushing other spells out and just being like, nope, this brain is mine now. I think that's cool. I think that counts. That counts. Question 8. What fantasy world do you think is the most well-developed and was the most thought through? Tough one. Really tough. Because I'd say Tolkien, because Tolkien put all of this knowledge and stuff into the history of his world, except Tolkien was really good at the history and the fantastical elements and the myth, but didn't really get the realities. Everyone's so reliant on the past, but no one's looking to the future. No one's trying to modernise their world or make their world better. There's no mention of trade, really. And I'm also really tempted to give it to George R.R. Martin because of Westeros, because that is also loads and loads of myth and history, but he's put a lot more effort into thinking about the world is like now, how it's changing, people interact, what people from one nation think of people from another nation. He does it well, but not nearly as well, and I'm sorry, is Robert Jordan. Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series is amazing, and I'm struggling to read it just because it's so dense and big. But in terms of thinking through that world, not only the history of it, not only the future, what he's going to be doing next in the series, how he's going to round the series off, but he also thought about how the nations interact, how trade works, and the building of roads, and how people can be isolated because of their geography, and there's just so much thought that went into the reality of that world, as well as the fantastical elements. I'll have to give it to him. Question 9. Which fantasy book and sci-fi book combined would make the most amazing stories? I think it would be A Song of Ice and Fire with The Hunger Games. Because you could have tributes coming from every, wealthy family of the Starks, the Targaryens, blah 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 blah, and it would be super brutal. But there'd also be the politics behind it, because there's a lot of scope there for politics and war and fighting and also magical stuff and all this stuff. Last question, question 10. What were the best, most underrated sci-fi and fantasy books you've ever read? I find it hard to think about what's underrated, because you have to read lots and lots and lots of reviews. On the fantasy note, I think Clariel by Garth Nix. There was more publicity for Clariel than there'd been for other of his books, but it's still not enough, I think, that he requires, because I think he's an amazing writer and the Abortion series is fantastic, and I think more people need to know about that, and I think that Clariel should have been really, really heavily pushed. Sci-fi wise, I'm not sure. I think also any of the Warhammer 40k books, because I read a few when I was a teenager, when I was into Warhammer. And the thing is, they're really good books, but they're just set in this expanded universe that people don't know about. Like, if the Warhammer 40k book series, like there's the Heresy series, the Gaunt's Ghost series, which I used to read, which are amazing. You know, if they were marketed generally as sci-fi, I think they do very well, but they're not. They're marketed towards people who like Warhammer. Because everything's well explained, you can still understand what's happening in the world without being into Warhammer, because they're very well written, and some great sci-fi ideas which weren't Warhammer based, they were the author was coming up with them. So I think them. Anyway, that's the end of the sci-fi and fantasy book tag. If you want to do it, do it. I'm not going to tag anyone, just go nuts, have fun. If you like this, then leave a comment, and thank you very much for watching.